this is Kilo 5, Kilo Oscar Bravo, Philip from Crandall. Am I going to make it in for tonight's net?
Phil, this is K1GBD. If your question is whether or not you're hitting the repeater in such a fashion that we'll hear you, the answer is yes, sir, absolutely. You're a little bit scratchy, but you're very, very copyable. You sound great.
Thank you very much. This is K5, KOB.
K5, KOB. Yes, sir. Pleasure. 73, K1GBD.
W5FC. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anybody need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. My name is Brenda, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. The net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control, that would be me, and stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.0. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the WFC-R station ID or Echolink number 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. 1. General announcements. 2. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. 3. National Space Society events. 4. Discussion topic of the evening. 5. What's up? 6. Space exploration and space history. 7. Constellation of the week. 8. Space launches of the week. And 9. Recent astronomical discoveries. 10. Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. 11. Astronomical Q&A, and 12. 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's start with low power and short time check-ins. We want your call sign, your name, and your location. Please come now.
This is Whiskey Bravo number 4, Mike Foxtrot India WB4MFI Ted Dallas low power.
This is
Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Sierra Gus, far northeast Dallas, low power 4 watts.
Kilo India 5, November Oscar November, Logan and Garland, short time.
Kilo India 5, Golf Romeo Hotel, Melissa, Dallas, short time.
Kilo India 5 Oscar Victor Victor, Chris in southeast Dallas, low power.
Okay, we got WB4MFI, Ted, W5GUS, Gus, KI5NON, Logan, KI5GRH, Melissa, KI5OVV, Christian. All right. Do we have any general check-ins?
This is Kilo 1, Golf Bravo Delta, Guy in North Dallas.
Kilo Oscar Bravo, Philip from Crandall.
Kilo Golf 5, Uniform Kilo Uniform, David, Mesquite.
Kilo Golf 5 Uniform Foxtrot Romeo, Jacob in Dallas.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Echo India Uniform, David, St. Paul, Texas.
November 5 Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving.
Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert Richards.
5 Oscar Foxtrot, Clay in Mesquite.
Kilo India 5, Lyman J. India Mobile, Crandall.
Tango X-Ray, Kelly and Quinlan.
Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie, X-Ray, Tom, Louisville.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Mesquite.
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton.
W5NKE, Dylan, Carrollton.
Kilo India 5, Quebec Delta Alpha, Dan Rowlett. Kilo Golf 5, Zulu India X-Ray, Joe and Wiley.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey J, New Web.
a good, healthy round. Unfortunately, I'm going to need some fills, hit some doubles and some static, and just, I messed up. It looks like K1GBD, missed the name. Would you please come back?
Yes, ma'am. The main name is Guy Golf Uniform Yankee. Guy. K1GBD.
And then next I have Philip, but I missed your call entirely.
Kilo 5, Kilo Oscar Bravo, Philip from Crandall.
All right, then we got KG5, KGU. It looks like Dan, I might be wrong. Is that right?
Well, that's KG5 UKU, David Mesquite.
Sorry, KG5 GKU, David. KG5 FR. Well, I am really not writing well today. Jacob, I think. Is that right? And let's move on. KF5ZBL, Bill. KG5EIU, David. N5BB, Bill. AA5AH, Robert. Then Clay, and I missed your call.
Hey, November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Clay and Mesquite.
Okay, November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Clay. And then I got one that starts KI5, and I missed all the rest of it.
KI5, or Kilo India 5, Lima, Sierra, India, Randy and Crandall.
KI5, LSI, Sandy. And
No, that's Randy, as in Romeo Alpha. Nancy. I'm still learning this stuff. Anyway, Randy in Crandall, Texas.
Alrighty, thank you. And then Kelly, I butchered your calls, and I should know it after all these years, but because I butchered it, now I can't read it. K5KTX.
That's affirmative. Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-ray, Kelly and Quinlan.
All right, and KE5ICX, Tom. KF5HA, Chaz. KG5WVL, James. W5NKE, Dylan. KI5 Quebec. Papa Alpha, Dan. KG5 Zulu India X-ray, I think it's Joe. KG5BZW, J. Do I need any corrections?
Yeah, it's KI5 Quebec Delta Alpha, Dan in Rowlett.
Kilo India 5, Quebec, Delta Alpha, Dan. Okay, any more check-ins? Okay, well, we'll take some more as we go. Do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? This could be him, Astronomical Space, or general interest to licensed hams. I apologize, I forgot Echo Link. Do we have any Echo Link check-ins? All right, none heard. So we have AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8, you will need Echo Link installed and be registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website, which is amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston. Dallas AMSAT Net East, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz, PL tone 110.9. On Tuesdays, Tom, N5HYP, is the net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is the DARC Club Night. No AMSAT East night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.14 megahertz, PL 110.9 megahertz positive offset. This next part is optional, as everyone seems to know about all the nets anyhow. If check-ins have been light, well, I won't do that. And Fridays we have CERT City. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa, KI5GRH, is usually the net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. CERT City, all are welcome. Saturdays, TechNet, 7 to 8, and of course, Skynet. First and third Sundays, the DARC meeting on the air, MODA. Daily, the ARRL net, National Traffic System Training net, every night at 6:30 p.m. All are welcome to check into any or all of these nets. All right. I'm going to call on Tom, KE5ICX, to read us a synopsis of the movie that he has chosen for tonight's Afterglow. Go ahead, Tom.
Brenda, you choose all the movies, but okay, if you say so. This is tonight's Afterglow info. The cameraman looked at me with a curious eye. So are you and your ham friends going to watch my movie? I responded with a facial cringe and tried to explain. You do know, we only do science fiction movies. He reacted with a snarl and recounted his days with Stanley Kubrick, Sidney Pollack, and Francis Ford Coppola. A story I knew wasn't true, but his psychiatrist had long ago accepted this as a cheap alternative to Prozac. Join us, a quote, Western, end quote, produced by my co-worker and his friends. It's even on the Internet Movie Database, though I have no idea why. Bought on the Brazos from 2006 tonight at 10:30 p.m. Alert, 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 alert. After viewing this movie for the first time last night, it makes our all-time worst film, The Creeping Terror, look like a masterpiece. So for fear this movie will cause people to not check in, we'll have an alternate title and questionnaire. Are you ready? Write this down. Are science fiction movies just space westerns in disguise? This will be the alternate topic, as it may be very difficult to watch this film. It's an hour and 40-something minutes long, but it feels like it's a 10-hour movie. So come on by anyway. It's around 10:30 this evening, and we'll ask: is science fiction just space westerns in disguise? And if you dare try and watch the film Blood on the Brazos, it's available on the interwebs, YouTube to be exact. Back to net control. This is KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Well, come on by anyway. We're going to have fun, despite this movie being the worst. Just the worst. I don't know what they did, how they distributed it. Nobody would watch it. You can keep up with all the ARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, w5sc.org. Okay, any additional check-ins? Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. Chaz, KF5JHA, do you have something for us?
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everyone. This is Chaz. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held in 6 days on Friday, July the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. The topic will be a members' open dialogue with questions and answers from members to members. The task members will receive an email link to the Zoom meeting in advance of the meeting, probably sometime later on in the next few days. TAS has plans to resume having face-to-face meetings in September, and they've already resumed having some public observing sessions with social distancing. One of the reasons why Skynet was picked to be on Saturday nights was so that there was an opportunity for live reports from TAS public observing sessions that are held on Saturday nights as well. So, if you wanted to find information about the meeting or information about the observing sessions, go to texasastro.org, and that'll give you up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. I hope that's all that you need. This is KF5JHA. Back to our net control. Thank you, Brenda.
All right, next, National Space Society events and activities. Bill, N5BB, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Brenda. This is N5BB. I happen to be the membership director of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. If you have any questions about the National Space Society, please send me an email to n5bb@arrl.net. It's November 5 Bravo Bravo @arrl.net. Our meetings are the second Sunday afternoon of each month. We have been doing virtual meetings on WebEx for a year and a half, but we finally started doing in-person meetings this last Sunday, July the 11th. So we're back to our normal meeting location, which is Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving. This is on the southwest corner of Highway 183 and Beltline, a couple of miles east of the south entrance of the DFW airport. I do not know what our next topic will be. Our next meeting will be on August the 8th. We normally have activities every month at schools and other public events like museums. But right now, those haven't really started up yet. The only thing that is started up will be the Frontiers of Flight Museum. We will have Moon Day, which is a week from today, July the 24th. The actual public is invited starting at 10 a.m. We open to the public from 10 until 3. Set up for the Dallas Amateur Radio Club and the National Space Society and AMSAT. This is Tom Schessler, N5HYP, is going to be organizing that, is going to be starting at 8 a.m. That's when you can get in there for setup. But it's open to the public from 10 to 3. Right now, that's our only public event set up in the next month, but we're hoping to be organizing some more. There's an event that was in Irving, which was canceled, but it's being rescheduled for later this year in October, I believe. Anyway, there's lots of things going on in space, as you probably realize. The most exciting one is what's coming up this coming Tuesday, the 20th. Tuesday, July the 20th, will be the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 first landing by humans on the moon. And Jeff Bezos, his brother, an 18-year-old guy that was added at the last moment to replace somebody else, and Wally Funk, who lives in the DFW Metroplex, will be going up there. So the youngest person, 18, and the oldest person, I think Wally is 82, ever to fly to space will be going up with Jeff Bezos and his brother on a Blue Origin flight leaving from West Texas. One of our members of the National Space Society local chapter has announced he plans to drive out there to see the launch. I think that's it for now. N5BB. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. By the way, the Dallas Amateur Radio Club will also have a table at Moon Day. If you want to sign up to help man the table, go to our website and select your times. Do we have any more check-ins?
Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington.
Joe, would you repeat your call sign, please?
Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington.
Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe. All righty. We're going to move into our discussion topic. The title of this, and I didn't make this title, Tom did this, is The Sky is Falling, Space Debris. So, if you think that's weird, you have him to blame for it. Space debris, known as space junk, space pollution, space waste, space trash, and space garbage. Sounds like a shrimp, Bubba Shrimp thing. Is defunct artificial objects in space, principally in Earth orbit, which no longer service a useful function. These include derelict spacecraft, non-functional spacecraft, and abandoned launch vehicle stages, mission-related debris, particularly numerous in Earth orbit, fragmentation debris from the breakup of derelict rocket bodies and spacecraft. In addition to derelict man-built objects left in orbit, other examples of space debris include fragments from their disintegration, erosion, and collisions, or even paint flecks, solidified liquids expelled from spacecraft, and unburned particles from solid rocket motors. space debris represents a risk to spacecraft. No kidding. Space debris is typically a negative externality. It creates an external cost on others from the initial action to launch or use a spacecraft in near Earth orbit, a cost that is typically not taken into account nor fully accounted for in the cost by the launcher or payload owner. The measurement, mitigation, and potential removal of debris are conducted by some participants in the space industry. As of October 2019, the U.S. Space Surveillance Network reported nearly 20,000 artificial objects in orbit above the Earth, including 2,218 operational satellites. However, these are just the objects large enough to be tracked. As of January 2019, more than 128 million pieces of debris smaller than 1 centimeter, about 900,000 pieces of debris 1 to 10 centimeters, and around 34,000 pieces larger than 10 centimeters were estimated to be around the Earth. One of the smallest objects of artificial space debris, paint flecks, solid rocket fuel, exhaust particles, etc., are grouped with micrometeoroids. They are together sometimes referred to by space agencies as MOD, micrometeoroid and orbital debris. Collisions with debris have become a hazard to spacecraft. The smallest objects cause damage to skin akin to sandblasting, especially to solar panels and optics like telescopes or star trackers that cannot easily be protected by ballistic shield. Below 2,000 kilometers, Earth altitude, pieces of debris are denser than meteoroids. Most are dust from solid rocket motors. Surface erosion debris like paint flecks and frozen coolant from RORSAT, nuclear-powered satellites. For comparison, the International Space Station orbits in the 300 to 400 kilometers range, while the two most recent large debris events, the 2007 Chinese anti-sat weapon test and the 2009 satellite collision, occurred at 800 to 900 kilometers altitude. The ISS has Whipple shielding to resist damage from small MMOD. However, known debris with a collision chance over 1 to 10,000 are avoided by maneuvering the station. Space debris began to accumulate in Earth orbit immediately with the first launch of an artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, into orbit in October 1957. But before even that, besides natural ejecta from Earth, humans might have produced ejecta that become space debris, as in the August 1957 Pascal B test. After the launch of Sputnik, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, began compiling a database of all known rocket launches and objects reaching orbit, satellites, protective shields, and upper stages of launch vehicles. NASA later published modified versions of the database in 2-line element set, beginning in the early 1980s with the Celestrak bulletin board system, republished them. Debris. The trackers who fed the database were aware of other objects in orbit, many of which were the result of in-orbit explosions. Some were deliberately caused during the 1960s anti-satellite weapon testing, and others were the result of rocket stages blowing up in orbit as leftover propellant expanded and ruptured their tanks. To improve tracking, NORAD employee John Gabbard kept a separate database. Studying the explosions, Gabbard developed a technique for predicting the orbital paths of their products, and Gabbard diagrams are now widely used. These studies were used to improve the modeling of orbital evolution and decay. When the NORAD database became publicly available during the 1970s, techniques developed for the asteroid belt In addition to approaches to debris reduction, where time and natural gravitational atmospheric effects help to clear space debris, are a variety of technological approaches that have been proposed, with most not implemented, to reduce space debris. A number of scholars have observed that institutional factors, political, legal, economic, and cultural rules of the game, are the greatest impediment to the cleanup of near-Earth space. By 2014, there was little commercial incentive to reduce space debris, since the cost of dealing with it is not assigned to the entity producing it, but whether falls on all users of the space environment, and rely on human society as a whole that benefits from space technologies and knowledge. A number of suggestions for improving institutions so as to increase the incentives to reduce space debris have been made. These include government mandates to create incentives, as well as companies coming to see economic benefits to reducing debris more aggressively than existing government standard practices. In 1979, NASA founded the Orbital Debris Program to research mitigation measures for space debris in Earth orbit. Debris growth. During the 1980s, NASA and other U.S. groups attempted limit the growth of debris. One solution was implemented by McDonnell Douglas for the Delta launch vehicle by having the booster move away from its payload and vent any propellant remaining in its tanks. This eliminated one source of pressure buildup in the tanks, which had previously caused load, and created additional orbital debris. Other countries were slower to adopt this measure, especially due to a number of launches by the Soviet Union, and the problem grew throughout the decade. A new battery of studies followed as NASA, NORAD, and others attempted to better understand the orbital environment, with each adjusting the number of pieces of debris in the critical mass zone upward. Although in 1981, when Schefter's article was published, the number of objects was estimated at 5,000. New detectors in the ground-based electro-optical deep space surveillance system found new objects. In the late 1990s, it was thought that most of the 28,000 launched objects had already decayed, and about 8,500 remained in orbit. By 2005, this was adjusted upward to 13,000 objects, and a 2006 study increased the number to 19,000 as a result of an ASAT test and a satellite collision. In 2011, NASA said that 22,000 objects were being tracked. A 2006 NASA model suggested that if no new launches took place, the environment would retain the then known population until about 2055, when it would increase on its own. Richard Crowther of Britain's Defense Evaluation and Research Agency said in 2002 that he believed the cascade would begin about 2015. The National Academy of Sciences, summarizing a professional view, noted widespread agreement that two bands of LEO space, 900 to 1,000 kilometers and 1,500 kilometers, were already past critical density. In the 2009 European Air and Space Conference, University of Southampton researcher Hugh Lewis predicted that the threat from space debris would rise 50% in the next decade and quadruple in the next 50 years. As of 2009, more than 13,000 close calls were tracked weekly. A 2011 report by the U.S. National Research Council warned NASA that the amount of orbiting space debris was at critical level. According to some computer models, the amount of space debris has reached a tipping point with enough currently in orbit to continually collide and create even more debris, raising the risk of spacecraft failures. The report called for international regulations limiting debris and research of disposal methods. Okay, do we have any more check-ins? Alrighty, it's time.
Kilo 5.
Check.
Juliet Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell.
This is KF5JHA. Brenda, did you get that last check-in from John?
Yes, not. What's his call?
John, go ahead and try it again.
Thanks, Jess. Sorry, Brenda. I hope I have enough power here. Kilo 5, Juliet Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell.
All right, thanks. KFI-JDW, John. Welcome to the net. Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everyone. This is Chaz, KF5JHA, and my degree is in astrophysics. I'm the astrophysics lab manager at Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus. We call this segment of Skynet, What's Up? Slide Master, that would be Tom. Thank you very much for doing that, Tom, every week. Slide number 2. On today, July the 17th, the moon is at its first quarter phase. So go outside and take a look. Last time I looked, it was mostly clear. There are some clouds trying to come in from the northwest, some rain showers in them. On July the 21st, the moon will be at its perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth. On July the 23rd, the moon will be at its full phase. On July the 31st, the moon will be at its third quarter phase. Slide number 3, please. On the eve of July the 24th, the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn will be in conjunction. That'll be in the southeastern part of the sky, kind of low. And, you know, the other night I was looking out the window and I was seeing Jupiter rising. At first I thought it was an airplane, and all at once I realized, wait, that's Jupiter. So it's now in the evening sky. It's late in the evening sky, but it's in the evening sky. Slide number 4, please. On the night of July 29th and 30th, there won't be just a meteor shower, nor 2 meteor showers, but actually 3 meteor showers that peak. That's right, 3 meteor showers that peak on the same night. The Alpha Capricornids will produce maybe a handful of meteors per hour. The Southern Delta Aquarid meteor shower is predicted to produce around 15, 16 meteors per hour. And the July Gamma Draconids will produce as many as maybe 100 meteors per hour of observing. Now, how do you tell what meteor is connected with which meteor shower? Well, you trace the trail of the meteor backwards to see what constellation of the meteor might have originated from. Slide number 5, please. On August the 8th begins a series of encounters of the moon with different solar system objects. On the evening of August the 8th, the crescent moon will be beside the planet Mercury in the low western evening sky around 8:30. Slide number 6, please. The very next night, on August the 9th, the moon will continue its encounters with solar system objects when it is in conjunction with the planet Mars in the low western evening sky around 8:30 again. And slide number 7, please. on August the 10th, the moon will be at its third solar system encounter with the planet Venus. And again, this conjunction takes place low in the western evening sky and look around 8:30 or so. I know sunset is around 8:20, so it'll be strong twilight when you're looking at it. But if you look at it early, it's higher in the sky. If you look at it a little bit later, it's going to be lower in the sky. If you've got any trees or buildings or anything in the way, you might not be able to see it if you look much past 8:45. This is KF5 JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 8, please. Once again, the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be on Friday, July the 23rd. That's in 6 days at 7:30 p.m. And the topic is Members Open Dialogue with questions and answers from members to members. Members of the Texas Astronomical Society will receive a Zoom link to the meeting in advance of the meeting. TAS has plans to resume their face-to-face meetings in September. And remember that the public observing sessions have already started. Some of them have already begun. Not all of them have. But to find out which ones, and they're held on Saturday nights during Skynet, you could go to one of those sessions, take your HT with you, and check into Skynet. TexasAstro.org is the website to find updated information and details about the meetings and the public observing sessions. Slide number 9, please. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have any questions or need a fill on any of the information I've just given you? Or do you just have a general astronomy question? I don't know everything, but I may know the answer to your question. If I don't, maybe someone else here does. Come now with your call sign if you have a question.
KI5OVV, I have 3 quick questions. One, how close do celestial objects have to be in order to be considered in conjunction? 2, how will this triptych of meteor showers compare to the Perseus in mid-August? And 3, do you have any good suggestions of places to observe said meteor showers? KI5OVV, back to that.
Well, those are all great questions. Okay, what distance does it have to be in conjunction? Actually, I don't know if there's a set distance and a number of degrees, but usually when the moon gets close to one of the planets, it's going to get close because they're all along the ecliptic, and so within several degrees, probably 10 degrees or less, that's going to be a conjunction. I've seen, though, listings of conjunctions that's more than 10 degrees, so I'm just giving you a rule of thumb at this point. But that's what it is. The moon is going to go by each one of those solar system objects every month, so it's a neat thing to see. Sometimes the moon's not that close to it when we see it in the nighttime sky, but for the other side of the Earth, it might be closer either the night before or the night after for us. That's 12 hours difference. Okay, so your second question, what these trio of meteor showers going to be compared to the Perseus? The Perseus are a pretty stable, predictable meteor shower that happens around August 11th and 12th every year, and they're probably the most famous for here in the Northern Hemisphere because it happens in the summertime. So go out and take a look at those. That's going to be coming up in, well, about 3 weeks. I'll talk more about that next week when we're talking about What's Up. But this trio, well, most of the 2 of these meteor showers only have a handful of meteors that are involved with them. Now, the Draconids, they might have up to 100, but maybe not that many. And unfortunately, because the moon is going to be close to just past full moon, it's going to be, I believe, a gibbous moon during this trio maximum. It's not going to have that many meteors that we could see, even if you get out in the country. And again, you need to get out in the country away from the city lights to be able to see the meteors. Now, where? I always recommend the state parks. There's 80 state parks and natural wildlife preserves that you can actually go camping. and it's a great, safe place to go, and we have one of the largest, if not the largest, state park system in the entire United States. So take advantage of it. It doesn't cost that much to camp there overnight. Depends on what you take with you. If you want dry camping or if you want a hookup of your trailer or whatever, that's where I would suggest going, is one of the state parks far away from the city lights. We have some that are close in. We go to Lake Ray Roberts State Park with our astronomy students when we used to be able to do field trips up until about a year and a half ago. And it's dark. It's not as dark as it was 15 years ago, but it's still dark enough to see quite a few meteors. I hope that answered your question. Did that help you out? This is KF5JHA.
KF5OBV, yes, that does answer my question. It's hugely helpful. I will look into Lake Ray Roberts as suggested as I camping equipment.
There's lots of other state parks around, but that's one of the close ones that's not too far away from the Metroplex. Okay, slide number 10, please, Slide Master. So as the moon waned at the beginning of July, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep for our world. It's the only one where humans live right now. And until next week, actually, I'll be doing another Skynet segment in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JHA. Back to our net control, Brenda. It's all yours again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz. Do we have any more check-ins? All right, next up is Kelly, K5KTX, with Space Exploration and Space History. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brenda. This is K5KTX, and good evening to everyone on Skynet. So some very good news for the Hubble Space Telescope. NASA has identified the possible cause of the payload computer problem that suspended Hubble Space Telescope science operations on June the 13th. The telescope itself and science instruments remain healthy and in a safe configuration. The payload computer resides in the Science Instrument Command and Data Handling Unit. It controls, coordinates, and monitors Hubble's science instruments. When the payload computer halted, Hubble's science instruments were automatically placed into a safe configuration. A series of multi-D tests, which included attempts to restart and reconfigure the computer and the backup computer, were not successful. But the information gathered from those activities has the Hubble team to determine that the possible cause of the problem is in the power control unit. The power control unit ensures a steady voltage supply to the payload computer's hardware. The power control unit contains a power regulator that provides a constant 5 volts of electricity to the payload computer and its memory. A secondary protection circuit senses the voltage levels leaving the power regulator. If the voltage falls below or exceeds allowable levels, the secondary circuit tells the payload computer that it should cease operations. The team's analysis suggests that either the voltage level from the regulator is outside of acceptable levels, thereby tripping the secondary protection circuit, or the secondary protection circuit has degraded over time and is stuck in this inhibit state. So NASA decided to switch to the backup hardware, including powering on the backup payload computer on July the 15th. The switch included bringing online the backup power control unit and the backup command unit science data formatter on the other side of the science instrument and command and data handling unit. In addition, other pieces of hardware on board Hubble were switched to their alternate interfaces to connect to this backup side of the science instrument and command and data handling unit. Once these steps were completed, the backup payload computer on this same unit was turned on and loaded with flight software and brought up to normal operations mode. The Hubble team is now monitoring the hardware to ensure that everything is working properly. The team has also started the process for recovering the science instruments out of their safe mode configuration. This activity is expected to take more than a day as the team runs various procedures and ensures the instruments are at stable temperatures. The team will then conduct some initial calibration of the instruments before resuming normal science operations. And actually, late-breaking news is that as of today, NASA has returned the science instruments to operational status, and the collection of data has now resumed. So that's very, very good news. So if you want to keep up to date with that, go to nasa.gov and just be looking for new information on the Hubble Space Telescope. Now going way beyond the location of the Hubble Space Telescope, we're going to go out to Jupiter by listening to the rain of electrons flowing onto Jupiter from its intensely volcanic moon Io. Researchers using NASA's Juno spacecraft have found what triggers the powerful radio emissions within the monster planet's gigantic magnetic field. The new result sheds light on the behavior of the enormous magnetic fields generated by gas giant planets like Jupiter. Jupiter has the largest, most powerful magnetic field of all the planets in our solar system, with a strength at its source about 20,000 times stronger than Earth. It is buffeted by the solar wind, a stream of electrically charged particles and magnetic fields constantly blowing from the sun. Depending on how hard the solar wind blows, Jupiter's magnetic field can extend outward as much as 2 million miles toward the sun and stretch more than 600 million miles away from the sun as far as Saturn's orbit. Jupiter has several large moons that orbit within its massive magnetic field, with Io being the closest. Io is caught in a gravitational tug-of-war between Jupiter and the neighboring two of these other large moons, which generates internal heat that powers hundreds of volcanic eruptions across its surface. These volcanoes collectively release 1 ton of material, gases and particles, per second into space near Jupiter. Some of this material splits up into electrically charged ions and electrons and is rapidly captured by Jupiter's magnetic field. As Jupiter's magnetic field sweeps past Io, electrons from the moon are accelerated along the magnetic field toward Jupiter's poles. Along their way, these electrons decameter radio waves, or decameter radio waves, so-called decametric radio emissions, or DAM. The Juno Waves instrument can listen to this radio emission that the raining electrons generate. The researchers used Juno Waves data to identify the precise locations within Jupiter's vast magnetic field where these radio emissions originated. These locations are where conditions are just right to generate the radio waves. They have the right magnetic field strength and the right density of electrons. Not too much and not too little, according to the team. The radio waves emerge from the source along the walls of a hollow aligned with and controlled by the strength and shape of the magnetic field of Jupiter. Juno receives the signal only when Jupiter's rotation sweeps that cone over the spacecraft. In the same way, a lighthouse beacon shines briefly upon a ship at sea. Data from Juno allowed the team to calculate that the energy of the electrons generating the radio waves was far higher than previously estimated, as much as 23 times greater. Also, the electrons do not necessarily need to come from a volcanic moon. For example, they could be in the planet's magnetic field or magnetosphere, or come from the sun as part of the solar wind, according to the team. Now, in space history from this past week, starting with July the 11th, back in 1979, America's first space station, Skylab, returned to Earth. Skylab, which had launched on May the 14th, 1973, from NASA's Kennedy Space Center, marked a new phase for America's human spaceflight program. The goal now became to stay in space for longer periods of time and conduct complex scientific experiments in the unique space environment. Dr. Werner von Braun and his team at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, converted this third stage of a Saturn V rocket into a habitable orbital laboratory. It was put into space on the last Saturn V to launch. Efforts in the early summer of 1979 to safely deorbit Skylab were mostly successful. The planned re-entry over the Indian Ocean happened as expected, but some of the remnants of Skylab went further east than expected and came down over parts of Australia. On July 12th, back in 2000, the Zvezda service module launched on a Russian Proton rocket. The first completely Russian contribution to the International Space Station, Zvezda served as the cornerstone for the first ISS inhabitants and provided living quarters as well as life support, communications, flight control, and propulsion systems. The ISS has since been completed, but Zvezda still functions as the heart of the Russian segment of the space station. On July 13th, 1995, Space Shuttle mission STS-70 took flight, setting a unique record. Space Shuttle Discovery was launched a mere 6 days after the landing of sister ship Atlantis. This marked the fastest turnaround between flights in the history of NASA. The original liftoff date had been targeted for June 22nd, but for several reasons, including an attack by northern flicker woodpeckers, which poked about 200 holes in the foam insulation of Discovery's external tank, the launch was delayed. On July the 14th, back in 1965, the Mariner 4 reached Mars and took 21 pictures, making it the first spacecraft to photograph another planet from close range. Flying as close as 6,118 miles from the surface, the probe observed that Mars had low atmospheric pressure compared to Earth, no magnetic field, and a surface with many impact craters. After completing its historic flyby, Mariner 4 continued on into solar orbit, where it observed the solar wind environment and returned data to Earth for 3 more years. On July the 15th, back in 1975, at 8:20 a.m. Eastern Time, a Soviet Soyuz spacecraft launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome. 7,000 miles away, and 7.5 hours later, an Apollo spacecraft took off from Kennedy Space Center. The two spacecraft met more than 100 miles above Earth on history's highest stage 2 days later in the culmination of the Apollo-Soyuz test project. Also on July the 15th, back in 2015, one of my favorite days in recent memory, 3 billion miles from Earth and moving at a speed that would get you from New York to Los Angeles in about 4 minutes, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft pointed cameras and sensors at the planet that is still a planet, Pluto, and its moons. The spectacular photos to come out of New Horizons over the following days and months captured the imaginations of people around the world. And by the way, the principal investigator, Alan Stern, has a new book out that looks really interesting. I can't think of the title of it at the moment, but it just came out in the last few days, so might be interesting, just all the research that's come back from that mission. And on July the 16th, 1969, with the help of 7.5 million pounds of thrust, a Saturn V rocket launched from Kennedy Space Center. Inside the Apollo and module Columbia sat astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. Just 2 hours and 44 minutes after launch, the engines reignited and pushed Apollo 11 out of Earth orbit toward the moon. And finally, we have several astronaut birthdays for this past week, starting with July the 11th, 1950. Lawrence DeLucas, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-50, and then Rick Husband was born on July the 12th, 1957. He flew on STS-96 and the ill-fated Columbia STS-107. On July 13th, 1950 was George Nelson, and he flew on 3 Space Shuttle missions, STS-41, 61, and 26. On July 14th, 1936 was Robert Overmyer. He flew on 2 Space Shuttle missions, STS-5 and 51B. And finally, today is the birthday of Janet Kavandi, who was on 3 space shuttle missions, STS-91, 99, and 104. And that's all I've got this evening. This is K5KTX. Back to you, Brenda.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Any more check-ins?
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean, welcome to the net. All right, next up, Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Chaz, KF5JAJ.
Thank you again, Brenda. Slide number 11, please, Slide Master. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week from almost its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019 with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations in Texas throughout the year, out of the total 88 constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky in a year. In her honor, we have continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week of this week is Hercules the Strong Man. Hercules is the son of the god Zeus and a mortal mother. He's best known for his 12 labors, which was an almost impossible list of things that he was required to do. Hera, who had tried to kill Hercules ever since he was born, induced a madness in him and made him kill his wife and children. Hercules went to the Oracle of Delphi to atone. He prayed to the god Apollo for guidance and was told to serve the king Argos for 10 years. During that time, he was sent to perform a series of 12 difficult feats called labors. To this day, an almost impossible task is often called a Herculean task. Okay, so slide number 12, what you've been waiting for. For the entire Skynet for more than an hour are the jokes of the week. I know this. Now, I hope you've read your mythologies about Hercules, because most of these jokes are related to that. So, okay, here we go. Why is Hercules the most suitable midwife out of all the demigods? Because he's already been through 12 labors. Oh, come on, that was funny. What do you call a female Hercules? A Hemicles. See, Hercules is a guy, and so Hemicles would be a female. Okay, maybe that wasn't very good. What do you call Hercules if he were one of the 7 dwarfs? Okay, this is a stretch, but I use this joke anyway. A Hemosneeze? I don't know. That doesn't work. What is Hercules' least favorite car? Mercedes. Mercedes? It was one of his labors. He had to go do something with a dog that was guarding the gates of Hades. Okay, another one. Everyone cheered when Hercules cleaned the Aegean stables. Everyone except the people living downstream. You see, again, you need to know the mythology behind it. He diverted 2 streams. Oh, well. And the final one in this segment. What motivated Hercules to face off Cerberus? See, this is the dog that's guarding Hades. Someone triple dog dared him. Now, it was supposed to have 3 heads, so that's why it was a triple dog dared him. Okay, these were all stretches, but you had to know the mythological stuff going on behind Hercules to get most of these jokes. Okay, slide number 13, please, Slide Master. Z Hercules is a variable star that ranges in brightness from magnitude 10.2 down to magnitude 12. SZ Hercules brightness cycle repeats every 16 hours, so you can collect a good portion of its brightness curve in a single observing session. SZ Hercules variability rises from the fact that it's a spectroscopic binary star. In other words, two stars going around each other, but they're really close, so you can't actually separate them, but you can tell there's two spectras from them. Another variable star, S Hercules, is much longer period of 307 days. S Hercules varies in brightness from magnitude 5.9 down to 13.6. Miss Carolyn loved variable stars, and she was active in the AAVSO, American Association of Variable Star Observers. The third star that I want to talk about is Alpha Hercules. Translates into the hat of the kneeler. Burnham Celestial Handbook notes that Hercules is often depicted as kneeling in the act of stringing his great bow. Beautiful double star, that's what Alpha Hercules is, with a reddish gold primary and a bluish secondary. With this color combination, it almost looks like a miniature Albireo. And Albireo is a very famous double star. And Cygnus, that has two different colors of stars. Slide number 14, please. M13, the great globular star cluster in Hercules, the finest globular cluster north of the celestial equator. It was discovered by Edmund Halley in 1714. First mention of it in astronomical writings by him through the following year. So M13 is visible to the unaided eye. In fact, it was not a single star was apparent, was not recognized until it was noticed by Halley. Halley himself first noted that the cluster shows itself to be naked eye when the sky is serene and the moon was absent. Messier himself thought that M13 was a nebula with a bright center. His small telescope could not resolve it into stars. If we lived inside M13, the appearance of the heavens would be spectacular, of incomparable splendor. The heavens would be filled with uncountable numbers of blazing stars, which would dwarf our own Sirius and Canopus to insignificance. Many thousands of stars ranging in brilliance between the brightness of Venus to up the brightness of the full moon would be continually visible, so there would really not be any nighttime at all on our planet and this globular cluster, because it would never get dark. Slide number 15, please. M92 is Hercules' other Messier object. Robert Burton Jr. notes that M92 is a beautiful, rich globular cluster, which is almost, in any other constellation, would be considered a major show object. In Hercules, it's somewhat overshadowed by the spectacular, famous M13, but M92, like M13, is easily visible in binoculars or a finder scope. The eagle-eyed James Stephen James O'Meara, in his book, The Messier Objects, note that he can see M92 without optical aid, and that one night he discovered that the two Hercules globular star clusters can be seen simultaneously with the unaided eye. M92 is noticeably smaller than M13. You can look at one in your telescope without changing eyepieces and slew over to the other one. You'll see that there's a difference in size. M92 is a bright, dense core and appears oval-shaped, slightly elongated north to south. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 16, please. There are more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Hercules. I've just given you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has over 70 different observing programs, most of which have around 100 objects. If you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pin in about a year. Slide number 17, please. And that is Miss Carolyn's constellation of the week, Hercules the Strong Man. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for their research and words on the deep sky objects that I've used, borrowed, and stolen, not just tonight, but every night. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Next time I'll take a look at Serpens the Snake. And this is KF5, JHA, sending it back to our net control. Brenda, it's all yours. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Chaz. Next up, space launches for the week. Tom, KE5ICX.
All right, thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. All the information I get comes from spaceflightnow.com/launch schedule. So here we go. July 21st. Is that today? No, that's in a few days. There will be a launch from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Russian government Proton rocket will launch the Nauka laboratory module to the International Space Station. The Nauka module, or the multi-purpose laboratory module, will carry the European robotic arm to the space station. In July, but yet to be determined on a launch date, from Launch Complex 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, Falcon 9 rocket will launch the first of dedicated mission with the Starlink Internet satellites from Vandenberg Space Force Base. This mission will deploy an unspecified number of Starlink satellites into high inclination orbit. On July 27th, Arianespace will use an Ariane 5 ECA rocket designated VA-254 to launch Star 1D2 and the Eutelsat quantum communications satellite. Let's see, I'm going to skip through that. On July 30th, there will be a launch from Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. A United Space Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket designated AV-082 will launch Boeing's CST-100 Starliner spacecraft on a second unpiloted test flight to the International Space Station. This mission was added after Boeing's decision to refly Starliner's orbital flight test before proceeding with a flight crew test. The rocket will fly in a vehicle configuration with two solid rocket boosters and a dual-engine Centaur upper stage. Next is August 2nd. A Russian Soyuz rocket will launch 34 satellites into orbit for OneWeb, which is developing a constellation of hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit for low-latency broadband communications. Soyuz 2.1B will use the Fregat upper stage. Then on August 10th, there'll be a launch from Wallops Island, Virginia at Pad 0A. Northrop Grumman Antares rocket will launch the 17th Cygnus crew freighter on the 16th operational cargo delivery flight to the International Space Station. This mission is known as NG-16. The rocket will fly in the Antares 230 Plus configuration with two RD-181 rockets, first stage engines, and the Castor 30XL second stage. And that's it from me, Brenda. Back to net control. This is KE5ICX.
Alrighty, thank you. Any more check-ins? Next up, recent astronomical discoveries. How the universe is reflected near black holes. In the vicinity of black holes, space is so warped that even light rays may curve around them several times. This phenomenon may enable us to see multiple versions of the same thing. While this has been known for decades, only now do we have an exact mathematical expression thanks to Albert Sneppen, student at the Niels Bohr Institute. The result, which is even more useful in realistic black holes, has just been published in the journal Scientific Reports. You've probably heard of black holes, the marvelous lumps of gravity from which not even light can escape. You may also have heard that space itself and even time behave oddly near black holes. Space is warped. In the vicinity of a black hole, space curves so much that light rays are deflected, and very nearby light can be detected so much that it travels several times around the black hole. Hence, when we observe a distant background galaxy or some other celestial body, we may be lucky to see the same image of the galaxy multiple times, albeit more and more distorted. The mechanism, a distant galaxy shines in all directions. Some of its light comes close to the black hole and is lightly deflected, and some light comes even closer and circumvolves the hole a single time before escaping down to us, and so on. Looking near the black hole, we see more and more versions of the same galaxy, the closer to the edge of the hole we are looking. How much closer to the black hole do we have to look from one image to see the next image? The result has been known for over 40 years and is some 500 times more accurate. And is some 500 times. There's a typo here. Calculating this is so complicated that until recently we had not yet developed a mathematical and physical intuition as to why it happens to be this exact factor. By using some clever mathematical tricks, master's student Albert Sneppen from the Cosmic Dawn Center, a basic research center under both the Niels Bohr Institute and DTU Space, has now succeeded in proving why. There is something fantastically beautiful in now understanding why the images repeat themselves in such an elegant way. On top of that, it provides new opportunities to test our understanding of gravity and black holes, Albert Sneppen clarifies. Proving something mathematically is not only satisfying in itself, indeed, it brings us closer to an understanding of this marvelous phenomenon. The factor 500 follows directly from how black holes and gravity work, so the repetitions of the images now become a way to examine and test gravity. As a completely new feature, Sneppen's method can also be generalized to apply not only to trivial black holes, but also to black holes that rotate, which in fact they all do. It turns out that when it rotates really fast, you no longer have to get closer to the black hole by a factor 500, but significantly less. In fact, each image is now only 50 or 5 or even down to just 2 times closer to the edge of the black hole, explains Sneppen. Having to look 500 times closer to the black hole for each new image means that the images were quickly squeezed into one annular image. In practice, the many images will be difficult to observe, but when black holes rotate, there is more room for the extra images, so we can hope to confirm the theory observationally in a not-too-distant future. In this way, we can learn about not just black holes, but also the galaxies behind them. The travel time of the light increases, and the more times it has to go around the black hole, so the images become increasingly delayed. If, for example, a star explodes as a supernova in a background galaxy, one would be able to see this explosion again and again. All right, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. Tom, KE5 ICX, what do you have for us?
All right, thank you, Brenda. Let's see. We don't have a ton of them. There's just a few. We got the Hubble Space Telescope. That is on July 24th, 1.2 magnitude. It's at 22:02 local time out of the west-southwest. Reach its highest point at 22:06 at 40 degrees and then fall at 22:07. The 25th, 1.2 magnitude again, distant at 21:51. West-southwest yet again, at its highest point at 2155 at 42 degrees out of the south, and will fall 2156 at 33 degrees. Then on the 26th, magnitude 1.2, 2140 this time, the west-southwest yet again, 2144 its highest point at 44 degrees out of the south, and it falls at 2146 to the east-southeast. Then we have the EnvySat, which is a dead satellite, but very large and easy to spot in a polar orbit. This one's on July 22nd at 4.9 magnitude. That's a bit dim. 6:02 a.m. out of the northeast, reaches its highest point at 31 degrees at 6:06 and falls at 6:10 out of the to the southeast. That's it. No decent ISS passes. Nothing with the new Chinese space station. It's really quiet right now, at least from reflective objects orbiting the Earth. Back to you, Brenda, KE5I6.
Thank you. Any more check-ins? All right, tonight we had 27 hands checking into the net. So we hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky's never the limit. We are always looking for net control stations for this and all other DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Until next Saturday night, this is WB50ZL, Brenda. I'll be closing the net at 10:28 p.m. local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. But wait, there's more. The Afterglow movie net. Tom, when do you want to start it?
Let's go ahead and start in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, I guess she's done. Now, we'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll be discussing the movie Blood on the Brazos. And if you couldn't handle that film, which is entirely possible, we will be talking about instead, in case you couldn't make it through the film, which is entirely possible, we'll be discussing movies, science fiction movies, and are they actually westerns in disguise? So that'll be your alternative. Think about movies that you have seen that have a western slant but are science fiction in stature. So come on back in 5 minutes. This is KE5ICX.
KE5ICX from W5G.
I'm completely operational and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow movie net.
Hey, Gus, go ahead. I heard you under the announcement. Go ahead.
Yeah. Quick question for you. Last
week, I guess it was Tuesday, I caught the second half of I think it was a 4-hour documentary on Apollo. I think it was called like Running for the Moon or Chasing the Moon, something like that, about the U.S.-Russian space race. And in it had the footage of Apollo 1 and the fire and inside. And I wonder if have you ever seen that documentary?
I've seen a bunch of them, and especially during the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. They ran just about every one of them. One of them that you could think of, more recent ones, over the last 10 years or so. I may have seen it. Your comments about Apollo 1 or about the video or the program in general?
I just wanted to inform you about this. It's a really, really good documentary. If you have not seen it, I know you're a big Apollo guy, and it has some really good details on it, and how they, it was just a wonderful 4-hour documentary. I think you should see it if you have not. Wanted to alert you about that. Really good. We're way into minutia and little things and pretty interesting little details.
Gus, give me the name again. What your best guess on what the name of it is?
Okay, it's Chasing the Moon or Running for the Moon, something like that. It was on NPR. It was on KERA television. I believe it was Tuesday evening. So you could probably track it down that way. But very good details. They had recording and video of the Apollo 1 capsule interior there just a moment before the fire. And you could hear the astronauts talking about a little fire starting and etc. So I don't know if you had seen that or not, but very good details and a lot of things on the space race.
All right. Thank you, Gus. I think I have. I think I've seen that, but I will go back and check it out if somehow I missed it. I do remember there was a bit more on Apollo 1. Generally, that's just almost mentioned in passing, but I do know that they did some of the recordings in that and played them. Probably for the first time that I had ever heard them on one of the programs, and maybe this is the one. I'll look it up. I've got a bunch of them in my archive on my digital server here. I'll go back and look and see if one of them's there. But I captured a ton of shows on the 50th anniversary. Was it year before last for the Apollo mission and the Apollo 11 mission? So it was really kind of fun. All right, very good. I think I'm net controlled tonight. Wish me luck. This is going to be a tough movie to discuss. KE5ICX.
Well, I think the alternative topic is a good one too, so that should help. All right, Tom. Enjoy it. Hope you have seen that. If you haven't, you're going to really enjoy it. KE5ICX, W5GUS. Have a good net.
K5ICX and 5BB. Oh, yes. Hey, Tom. Hey, I'm sorry. I meant to look at the movie this week, but I was just overloaded with stuff yesterday and today. So I was not able to look at it. So I will not be on Afterglow. Or maybe I will be listening in the background, but I won't check in the Afterglow. Let's put it that way. Just wanted to let you know I wanted to look at it, but just totally overloaded with stuff to do. See ya in 5BB.
Well, Bill, you may want to still check in. It depends on your interest. I tried to watch the film. This was done by one of the guys that works with me, and he did this movie back in 2006. And he said, "You've got to see it. You got to see it." Well, I saw it, and there's a lot of things to say about the movie. Most of them not good. But he is my videographer guy that does all the work for our internal videos that we do for training videos and that. He does a good job with those, and actually the technical part of the film was pretty good. It's just that the script was really convoluted. The acting was iffy. The sound and picture were okay, considering that, which is his part. But overall, so the topic actually, because there's not going to be a lot we can actually talk about this film. We'll talk about our science fiction films, really nothing more than westerns in disguise. That's what we can talk about. Pick your favorites, either that it's true or not true. So that would probably be our main topic, because I have a feeling this movie we're going to go through in about 15 minutes tops. So think about that. And it's time to get started. I can't change my lower third for some reason, so it's just me. So we're going to talk about Blood on the Brazos. I'll just paraphrase. It's a movie that came out in 2006. It was done by actually amateurs that wanted to go ahead and do a Western. Western reenactors were involved, played specific characters in the thing, and the story has to do with two kids that go out and decide they're going to steal a horse for fun. And then one of them gets killed, and then everybody starts getting upset about the whole thing, and everybody just starts in for a free-for-all, and it ends with everybody being shot at the end credits, and that's about it. There's a little bit with Comanches in it. I couldn't tell if they were real Comanches or not, but they used Comanche language, which I thought was pretty cool. There was a small town that was used for this. It looks like it's probably a commercial enterprise somewhere. I'm not sure where. I'll have to ask my guy, Don, who did most of the filming, where it was actually filmed. Most of the actors had bit parts, short stories. Some of the characters, such as there was an Undertaker who was kind of entertaining in the thing. And then there was other actors, Wild Bill Hickok type character in it. But most of the dialogue was very forgettable. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and take check-ins. Remember, you don't have to talk about Blood on the Brazos. It's not a science fiction film. But if you'd like to also instead talk about movies that, science fiction films that look a little bit like westerns or vice versa, you can bring those up. Or if you just want to say, yep, most science fiction films are like westerns, or no, you're wrong, they're not like westerns at all. So that's your topic. So let me go ahead and take check-ins. Whether you saw the movie or not, it's immaterial. Please come now with your call sign, your name, where you're transmitting from. Please come now.
Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zoo Whiskey J near Woodford, and I guess I'll be using the echolink tonight because the sound doesn't sound too good. Here.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie. Just finished it now, in fact.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brendan DeSoto. Yes, I saw the movie.
Kilo India 5 Oscar Victor Victor, Chris, Southeast Dallas. I have not seen the movie, but from your description, sounds like I didn't miss much.
All right, we got 4 brave souls in it. We've got KG5BZWJ near Weatherford. Jay, you're a little scratchy into the repeater. If you have the ability to go ahead and increase power, you may want to go to Echolink. You're just a little bit more noise than audio. Just wanted to mention that. No, you did not. Mercifully did not see the movie. That's good. NT5TM, Tony in Dallas. Yep, he just finished the movie. This should be most interesting when he gives his analysis. WB50ZL, Brenda in DeSoto. Yes, she saw the movie. And KI5OVV. That's Chris in Northeast Dallas. No, he did not see the movie, and he's happy he didn't. Anyone else who'd like to check in? We are going to be talking about Blood on the Brazos, which is our only Western we've ever done, and I'm not sure it's that. But it was done by a guy I work with, and he wanted us to review it. After 2 years of bugging me about it, we did. You don't have to have seen Blood on the Brazos, because we'll have a topic in talking about our science fiction films, actually Westerns in disguise. Additional check-ins come now.
Kilo Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey. I actually did see this movie.
November 5 Bravo Bravo. I have not seen the movie.
Okay, I got the correction on Jay. He did see the film, and I got N5VV Bill. No, he didn't see the movie, but we can talk about sci-fi as Westerns or Westerns as sci-fi. Anyone else? And before we get started, would like to join us? Okie dokie, let's get started. We got KG5BZWJ. Your signal's better now. What did you think about the movie? And when you run out of things to say, what do you think about sci-fi and Westerns? Are they the same? From KE5ICX, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and use Echolink because I didn't do anything to make the signal better. It was better. I just don't know why. Anyway, about the movie. Honestly, I'm going to have to disagree with you on 2 things. I don't think that the film was strictly as bad as you had previously made it out. But secondly, the things that really most annoyed me were the sound. It just was not consistent all the way through the whole. And I'm sure part of that is they didn't have the proper funding to do, mic booms and whatnot to make sure the recordings were consistent. But goodness, it was so hard to even understand these characters, much less, follow whatever plot lines they were trying to go through. I agree that there's an element of a story there, but it's just the dialogue was very lackluster. I like the shots. That sound quality, though, that it was just so. I did have to take several breaks to get through this film. So yeah, there's that. Plot. I don't know. It's probably. There's been some films that have definitely been worse than the. They actually the convolution of it actually kind of made it kind of intriguing to me a little bit. I mean, they tried to make it. Whoever tried to make it entertaining, but even there were a few times when I thought the injection of humor was actually successful, surprisingly. I'm also judging this film by the fact that it is clearly low budget and they didn't have that much to work with. Although they had the actors, they had people, not necessarily good actors. They had people acting okay, and it was not. The acting was not good. It was not good either. There's like maybe a couple of actors among the whole crew. I kind of want to try the other question here. Let me reset. Okay, that was weird. It took a while for the radio to turn off. Westerns. I do not think Alien was a Western. Of course, Alien is a horror flick. I don't know. It's like, I have to think of a few, because there's a number of them that's clearly more adventure-esque or something. It's like, and that it's like, well, are all adventures Westerns? We may have to qualify that, because there really is a lot of overlap between Westerns and kind of adventure, kind of. It's like, well, okay, Indiana Jones, I don't consider that a Western, so certainly some of the Marvel movies seem to be a little bit more towards Indiana Jones than standard sci-fi. But then our Marvel, like I'm thinking of the Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. But that's almost comic book, and that might be a separate thing. Even though you're going all over the place, it's sci-fi. It's kind of sci-fi. It's not really. Anyway, I don't know. That's Marvel movies and all that was ever taught. It's like Star Trek. Oh, you know what? I don't want to randomly mention movies. Some of them clearly are. Obviously, you go for Firefly. It's meant to be a sci-fi Western, but or whatever the movie was. I may be confusing the TV show with whatever the movie. Anyway, I'm sorry. When it comes to that topic, I'm interested, but I'm rambling incoherently, so I think I'll just leave it at that. KG5EZW.
All right, no problem, Jay. Well, the movie itself, thanks for your comments on that. You had a few details, because I couldn't remember very many of them after it just kind of turned into whatever. But, yep, okay. You did mention, are all action films Westerns? And that's a good point, because they don't necessarily have to be. They have setups that work well when you're creating films, and actually any film or television series has a construct that's used over and over again, and I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and maybe that by default the subset of that would be Western, so I don't know, we'll see. Now Tony, NT5TM, he actually saw the film and sat through it. Tony, your thoughts, if you want to do plot or anything about the film, go right ahead. I'm most curious to hear what you gleaned from Blood on the Brazos from 2006, filmed here locally from KE5ICX.
Oh, so many things, so many things. I've never seen so many overweight white people shooting at each other before. Most people in the Old West weren't fat because the principal source of motive energy was human muscle. So every calorie you ate, you worked off and then some. But that's not important right now. The one thing I think Westerns and science fiction, and in fact so many Hollywood movies all have in common, is that urge to have a big face-to-face showdown at the end between the hero and the villain. I think the Westerns did that first, and it got carried through into so many other things. Although not every science fiction movie has that. Alien was just mentioned. That's kind of a horror. Star Wars, one of the archetypical science fiction movies, is an odd mashup of Triumph of the Will and The Bridges at Toko-Ri. So you can borrow from all sorts of different genres, and then we don't even really understand how 2001: A Space Odyssey ended. So they're not all westerns, although there's certainly that very classic Hollywood structure of escalation as the movie goes on. In this movie, I really thought this was the best filmed high school play I'd ever seen. They had money for squibs and all kinds of things, and because there are like towns that exist just to rent, like fake towns that somebody built a western town on their ranch and they rented a movie location, and that's what they do. In years when they don't get enough money from the sheep, they rent out their western location for movies and TV shows. They could afford one of those. They had blood capsules. The plot was, other than the great outline of, what was mentioned earlier, the kid stole a horse as a prank, got shot, big shootout, everyone dies. Ensemble cast, they were very earnest. That's really what made me think of the high school play. The sound, let me talk about that briefly. Aaron mentioned the Manson family, the crime family, even used to hang out at a movie ranch that did that. I have worked on some low-budget movies, and there is a secret in Hollywood that isn't really very secret, but is often forgotten, which is that 99% of the time, the sound they're getting on the set, unless, with the booms and so forth and hidden microphones, unless they are in a soundproofed room with all the cameras having these things called blimps over them, these fuzzy things to block out the motor as the camera, if you're very careful, you can get usable sound. But more and more sound every year as the years goes by is overdubbed to the point where most dialogue in most movies we see now is overdubbed after the movie is shot. The sound they're getting on the set is what's called a guide track. The actors are then going to copy their emotion and delivery and timing later in a sound booth, where there are no crew, no dogs barking, no jet planes flying overhead. And small budget movies like this, or the ones I worked on, can't afford that. So you have to deal with the sound you got on set, where someone was standing too far from the mic, but what do? They hit their mark, the mic was in the wrong place, that was the one take that was in focus where they remembered their lines, you're stuck. So even in movies that got theatrical release, like Office Space, if you pay attention to them, the sound is really, really erratic. It's one of the things that's most expensive to get right, because you have to hire everyone to come back for additional time to overdub their own lines, just because it's so hard to get decent sound. Movies are so visual, and you're trying to get the right shot, and is mostly what you get on set. I thought they were earnest. They tried hard. I give them a lot of credit for that. The plot was hard to follow, in part because I couldn't follow a lot of the dialogue. Good ensemble cast. They were all very earnest. I appreciated that. I think they were speaking Kiowa, not Comanche. At least I got that from the credits. And, I don't think all science fiction movies are westerns, but they sure all like to have fistfights, especially in the 60s, and they sure like to have the big climactic showdown, unless they're really different movies like 2001. Well, that's my extended essay, but don't worry, I'm not going away. NT5TM.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. And you could be right. I don't remember. It was sort of like I was losing interest in the film, and I still have to give my book report Monday to my coworker and tell him how much I love the movie. It's interesting you mentioned the sound thing. One thing that I do know, and it's quite entertaining, is that we just turned in some video for, it's an online class, and I reviewed it, and I sent it back to the guys that were working on it. I said, you've got some audio, and one of the first people that was working on the movie on this movie, and you're talking about the sound in that, he said the audio is kind of up and down a little bit. They're going to catch it, and they're going to mention it to the headquarters. And he said you probably should correct it, and I gave the places where to correct it. And of course, I went on vacation, and they didn't correct it, and they got bleeped for it. So, it's tough to do. One thing that's interesting, I'll make this comment now just to kind of stretch it out a little bit, but sound is really important, and to do it right. And you're absolutely right. One thing is when you're in a sound stage, and it's not in a large sound stage, you got to dub everything because you've got to have the sound being consistent. You don't get echoes, hard walls, and all of that. We find that problem when we do stuff. We literally set people up and put them in a room when you're doing voiceovers and things, and we put them in the same place all the time. Mic placement's important. If you're using boom mics, you're still going to get some audio. There's echo and rejection that you have. You have to have a microphone, and we saw that in one of the presentations with Bob Heil. He mentioned it. How much rejection of sound that's reflected do you have with a microphone? And you get that with a really good mic. If you don't have that, then you're going to hear the hard wall sounds, the echo, or a boxy sound, things like that. It really gets to be annoying, and that's always a problem. So it's very important. I didn't think it was all that bad, but maybe because I'm so used to the sound that I got now, I don't know. But in any case, let me move on. Let's go to Brenda, WB50ZL. Miss Brenda, your thoughts on Blood on the Brazos and anything else, including our rhetorical question. Are Westerns and are sci-fi movies really just Westerns in disguise? In case you run out of things on Blood on the Brazos. From KE5ICX. Go ahead, Brenda.
This is WB50ZL. On the whole, I thought it was boring. The dialogue was pretty bad. The jokes just fell flat. The one curious thing is that little town had grass in the road. I've never seen that. You know, the grass gets beaten down by the hooves. Every little pioneer town I've ever seen has a dirt road. Lots of liquor and prostitutes. Apparently that's their main industry there. Nobody ever seemed to work much. Bunch of lazy people sitting around bragging or threatening to shoot each other. I really didn't buy that those were Comanches. They didn't look like Comanches to me. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. If they were smart, they would use real Comanches reenactors in there, and maybe they did. I know Tom told me that a lot of these people were reenactors, which is why the costumes look really good. They spare no expense for their own costumes, none. And some of them were credible actors, even. A few of them were, but the dialogue was still pretty bad. If they hadn't been trying to make jokes, it would have been so much better. The jokes just fell flat for me. I had trouble following the plot. So far as science fiction being westerns, a lot of them are. It has that element of good guys versus bad guys, and shoot 'em ups, and you know, you're going to go after the bank robber and catch him and bring him to justice, or the murderer, or the horse thief, and you have a lot of that in science fiction too. All right, back to net, WB50ZL.
right, thank you, Brenda. I think. Next up is Chris, KI5OVV. He's Northeast Dallas. Now, he didn't see the film, but that's okay. Chris, what do you think? Do you have any examples or any movies that, or television series for that you think science fiction core, but actually has kind of a Western theme to them, or is inspired from Westerns? What do you think? And also, would you like to see this film? KI5OVV from KE5I6.
Well, KI5OVV here, Chris in Southeast Dallas. It's surprising to me that we have gone 30 minutes and not mentioned the 2011 film of Cowboys and Aliens, starring Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford. I think that kind of doubles down on the whole sci-fi is a Western theme, period. I don't think every sci-fi film is a Western movie set in space, but a lot of them are. Star Wars has a bunch of that stuff. You mentioned Firefly, of course, which is give me a song named James. But yeah, it's there's
Chris, did we lose you? I wasn't sure.
Hey, this is Chris, KI5OVV. I am operating a little out of Southeast Dallas on a cheap Bofang. But mentioning the 2011 film Cowboys and Aliens, starring Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford, as an example of sci-fi westerns.
Oh, okay, Chris. If you're done, go ahead and give me your call sign, then I know you're done.
Sorry about that. KI5OEV, back to net.
All right, thanks. It's just, it's one of those films you're scratching your head going, I don't know, and you run out of things, and I don't know if you're trying to think of something else to say to maybe, provide a more complete answer, but, this one's a tough one to do. So let's see. Bill, N5BB. I know you didn't see the film, and you apologized, which is really not an apology. It's a blessing in disguise. But what do you think? Are science fiction films actually really westerns in disguise? From KE5ICX. Go ahead.
Well, this is N5BB. I think it depends on which kind of science fiction film. Some science films may be more of mysteries or other kinds of films. Some are more like westerns. Some are more like war films. So I don't know if they all are like. I think you may be thinking of certain kinds of science fiction films, like maybe Star Wars and things like that. Yeah, those are westerns. And maybe Star Trek, maybe. But I don't know. I think that's a little simplistic. Inside BB.
Well, that's possible. That's part of the reason why I asked the question the way I did is that to invoke other responses and alternatives to that. So let me go ahead and ask if there's any additional check-ins. Tonight we're talking about an actual Western that was produced by a co-worker of mine called Blood on the Brazos, an hour and 45-minute movie that actually was the Internet Movie Database, and that's about it, about a practical joke that got out of control, I guess. We are also talking about science fiction movies and whether they are Westerns in disguise. So if anybody would like to join us, whether you saw the movie or not, come now with your call sign in your name.
KC5 MPO, JB Mobile, Dallas. Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Yes, I did see the movie.
Oh, very good. We picked up two more. Jamie, KG5, I missed the rest of your call. Go ahead and give me your full call. And you probably didn't see the movie, but what do you think? Are Westerns, are science fiction movies just Westerns in disguise? Go ahead, Jamie.
Call signs KC5, Mike Papa Oscar. And the guy I'm riding with said he saw the movie and he thought it was pretty good. KC5 MPO.
Okay, well, that's pretty straight and to the point. Okay, I got Hilo Charlie 5 MPO. I got you down, Jamie. Sean, KB9 SOK over in Fort Worth. You sat through the film. Your thoughts on the film? Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Yes, it was difficult to be honest, to watch this through. There's times I was kind of thinking, is this thing close to being done? But I agree with a lot of what I believe it was Tony said about it. I had the same thought partway through. It's like, yeah, this seems like it was a high school play, just with the acting and how it was written. And it really kind of reminded me of when I was younger and several of our friends got together and we tried to make our own little movie and was using handy cams and stuff like that, and it seems like there's some similarity there as far as it looked. But yeah, this movie was very confusing. It seems like it tried to have multiple plots. You obviously had the kid being bullied into, stealing a horse, and then you had the guy that initially it looks like he was following the way of the West, and you kill horse thieves, but yet it turns out he was really in reality a bad guy that had been bullying the town and stealing land, and so he ended up being ultimately the bad guy. Then we had the side story with the Indians, and that just didn't seem to fit at all, really, other than just an excuse to get the sheriff out of town, which honestly I think they could have skipped that whole part, just said he was out of town. And then you had the bar owners trying to find a way to get out of it by getting the one guy killed. So they had multiple little plot lines going on, but they didn't really go well together. Partway through this movie, I kind of started to get the impression that because of all the crazy one-liners and some of the scenes, that was their intentions to actually make this a comedy. Especially when we got to the scene of all the prostitutes in the bar saying what they would have liked to have done to the young man had he not been killed. So it was like it just kind of went on and on and on. And at one point, it's like maybe they were trying to make a comedy here, and it almost makes more sense if that was what their intent was. But yeah, the sound was a little rough. I agree with the comments on that. At the same time, as was mentioned, that's not the easiest thing to do. About a year ago, I was asked at work to put together a kind of a little bit of a generic documentary of our warehouse, and that was our biggest problem with sound. And we ended up doing exactly what was mentioned. We ended up just dubbing afterwards to get good audio, because it is not an easy thing to do. In a lot of ways, really, the video is the easy part. it's really getting that audio so it is good and clear without noise in the background and at the same levels, and spent really more time on audio than anything. So I totally get to where that's really tough to do, and especially on a low-budget film. As far as movies go, as far as our all science fiction, westerns, I don't think so. I think there's obviously a few obvious ones that have already been mentioned that were very much, kind of that effect, but at the same time, is really good guys versus bad guys ever really a new concept? Haven't we had that long before westerns with plays and stuff in the past? So I'm not really sure that that's really the case, or at least not for me personally. Obviously, there are always some similarities, as far as you want to talk about fight scenes and, good versus bad, but I think we've kind of had that over time. So I really don't think so. There are just a couple obvious ones that were mentioned. That's really all. Net control, this is KB9SOK.
Okay, Sean, really good comments. Thank you for your contributions on that. Okay, my comments, some of it I've already made, but I agree with Sean. Some of the things, some of the backstory on this is, of course, these are reenactors, and they're pulling their shtick and putting it into the movie, and I think there's probably too much of it. One of the things that you end up with is, and what's really important, is editing. Editing is important. How much of a story do you want to tell? There are times when you've got, like you were talking about the sheriff and having this whole thing to get him out of town, and it's a long and involved, drawn-out thing. How much does it matter? How much does it actually add to the film? And if it causes the film to drag, you drop it. In some cases, when you have scenes that, and there are movies, one of them was, I think, Star Wars, and another one was Blade Runner, two of our science fiction films, where they talk about what happened to the replicants in Blade Runner. And it was supposed to be an interview with the guy who was shot. He wasn't killed at the very beginning of the movie, the original Blade Runner. They actually interview him and find out what's going on. That scene dragged. I saw the original that as it was supposed to appear in the film, a deleted scene. This is really boring. And they just gave the dialogue to Harrison Ford. Here, you say this, and essentially bring us up to date on what happened. The other thing, another example of that is, and I don't know why they added it back into the film, Jabba the Hutt, supposed to appear in the original Star Wars. Well, there's a whole scene where, I think it's with Guido, where they talk about the Jabba the Hutt, and they give Guido all the lines about what's happening, rather than having him in the space dock or the space, whatever that thing was, because it's superfluous. They just took that information and moved it over because, quite honestly, they didn't have the special effects up to speed yet to do Jabba the Hutt. Let me reset. And in some cases, scenes just are completely removed because they're just not worth the time. There was in 2001, I'm also reading a book about it called Space Odyssey, although they don't mention this particular thing in the book that I'm reading, but they did mention that about 20 minutes was removed from the movie, and there's a scene that is on the space station to show kids are on the space station, and it's this nice little recreational area, and Dr. Haywood Floyd talks there with the kids in the background as fodder, I guess. That was removed, and whatever little bit of dialogue that came out of that was moved into the scene with the Russians and that in the space station lobby. So you make these changes and adjustments as you go. As far as the audio, as we mentioned earlier, yeah, you've got to dub everything, but I already talked about that. Let's see. Movies that we've seen, yes, there have been plenty. Cowboys and Aliens would be a really fun one to do. If I can find a commercial-free streaming version of that, would be nice. The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. is a supernatural alien thing. That's actually a lot of fun. If you've never seen that series, it's a blast. It's very cool. It was on Fox. I think it was on Fox about 20 plus years ago. And all the episodes are available online for free on YouTube. Check out a few episodes. I think you'll find it quite interesting. There is also, of course, The Mandalorian, which is certainly through and through a Western, taking place in space. Firefly is an obvious choice as well. Some of the lesser-known ones, there's the Battlestar Galactica with the gunslinger, and it's very obvious they're riffing on Westerns. And then, of course, Lost in Space stole from everybody. West of Mars with the super swift Dr. Smith. Yes, I know those are all blatantly rip-offs, but they did try and use them. Now, to me, the idea of having, using Westerns as a premise really kind of does work. I mean, maybe it's a stretch, and you may or may not agree, but, you're supposed to be someplace where you're beyond the law, and you've got guns, and you're a gunslinger. How many of the 50 movies did we see where the astronauts landed on the moon, have a handgun, or land on a planet somewhere ready to shoot aliens, even though there's probably no life on the moon at all? I think that was Destination Moon they did that, or one of the movies. That's one thing, and then you think about, you're in an uncharted area, you don't know who the native people might be, or any of the people you might come across. Your wagon, your horse, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and you have no real protection except your fellow travelers. Very much seen in science fiction movies and the like. So I think there is some inspiration. I probably made it too basic, only just to get a rise out of people to see what they would say as far as whether there are Westerns. But yeah, I think a lot of inspiration comes from Westerns. Not all of it, certainly, but I think some of it is. And if you're not sure about a space age movie to do, think of a Western and put rockets in it, and I think you'll have the start of something, and then you can build beyond that. Well, I did want to mention something. This is quite amusing. There was a series, and this has to do with sound. There was a series when they tried to bring back the Twilight Zone. I think it was even called the New Twilight Zone. It was a series that was done in the 1980s with the whole Rod Serling vibe to it. Of course, Rod had been dead since '76. And the story editor on that was Harlan Ellison. He wrote the premiere episode for that New Twilight Zone. I think it was 1984. I'd have to go back and look. And it was from a story that he had written years ago called The Shatter Day, play on words, Shatter Day, about a guy, and it's played by Bruce Willis in one of his first television roles as a person that slowly disappears from the scene. He just fades away, and the whole ruminations that go along with it. There's a scene, and by the way, if you ever get that series, the first season's excellent. It's really a lot of fun to watch. A lot of the episodes are there. This was a 20-minute vignette. They will usually do 2 or 3 stories, but here's the thing of it. Harlan Ellison wrote the story. He was there on set watching as Wes Craven, the horror director, was directing the thing, and he told Bruce Willis to scream that in the very last scene, to scream that he could not take what was happening to him, and in the process he lost his voice, and he couldn't do the rest of the scenes. So he did the scenes, of course, because you got the teams, the people there, but the voiceovers all had to be done later on because his voice was strained. Ellison thought that was a horrible thing, and thought Wes Craven was an idiot for doing that. This is on the soundtrack, beside whatever they call it, the commentary track. Meanwhile, Wes Craven has his own track, and you switch over to him, and he says, "Oh, Harlan Ellison's a wonderful writer. He gave us a wonderful story, and it was great to have Bruce Willis on board, and all of that." And I thought it was hilarious going back and forth between these two narrations. Harlan Ellison just totally ripping Wes Craven a new one. Wes Craven is being complimentary of Harlan Ellison and Bruce Willis through the whole thing. Oh my, how things happen. But I thought that was all kind of entertaining. All right. Does anyone else want to check in before we move on? If we got something to move on to, anyone else like to check in? Please come now. All right, I see JJ on here. He's got some comments. N5IMS, he says, try the book series on unicorn westerns. Oh. It says here, there's a good matchup of sci-fi and westerns. And then he says, perhaps the reverse may be true. Are westerns all really just sci-fi films at their heart? It could be, but I think that the westerns came first, somehow, way, shape, or form. All right, let's go ahead and open it up. This might be a short evening, only because we didn't have a lot of material. But if anybody's got any comments about anything you'd like to talk about, whether it be the film itself or additional comments about westerns or movies or anything like that, go ahead. Anything you would like to talk about, or if you've got a movie you'd like us to review, I'll put those down too. Just come with your call sign, and I'll put you on the list. Please come now.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
Okay, we got two. I've got Jay, KG5BZW, KG5BZW, and NT5TM Tony. So Jay, go ahead and start. What do you got for us from KE5ICX?
All right, so I guess three things I wanted to say, and I may say a few other things. First of all, I guess one big excuse me, thing that kind of is a crossover in my mind with sci-fi and westerns is the let's just take a look at it abstractly. The train. What is a train? It's a new form of travel to get somewhere a lot faster than one could go before. In a cheap manner, so relatively cheap manner. So I mean, the whole aspect of sci-fi, one aspect is warp drive. You got just mechanisms of getting to a distant place easy, or even sometimes you have the. You may have faster than light travel, but then you have these corridors or something, so it's super faster than light. So it's all about a lot of sci-fi seems to revolve around these access to methods of travel, and something just popped into my mind. So there's that. I guess I don't want to talk about the movies. I did like the end of theme music. That wasn't too bad. The characters, I know I can ramble on about that. I guess so. Yeah, I guess I've covered two of the things. It is interesting on tvtropes.com. Reading the first few paragraphs of the Western entry and how it's kind of impossible to define the genre. I won't say impossible, but hard, especially given a number of the movies or stories, because we're talking about stories here, not just the films. Like one film, Stagecoach, in 1939, was considered a classic, but to quote TV the tropes, that already was an attempt by John Ford to turn many of the then existing conventions on their ear as possible, and to go back as far as he would be allowed under the constraints of the Hays Code. So And, you know, there's other paragraphs about all kinds of stuff, especially how some of Westerns are contemporaneous with the actual, you know, I'm like, this is my own wording, like pitting, I won't call them pitting novelists, probably not true, but I remember reading about some of this stuff when I went to Wyoming, read about Wild Bill Hickox, a few of those others. I think of and Get Your Gun. There's I'm not remembering everything here. It's yeah. I get distracted because I just can't remember. But so the entry is at least worth some scanning over. Other than that, my cats begin to scrabble and whatever. I don't know that I have anything else to say. KG5BGW.
All right, thank you, Jay. Let's see, Tony, NT5TM, your thoughts. Go ahead from KE5ICX.
Yeah, Aaron and I have been talking, and certainly some science fiction movies are westerns. I mean, you just put, as she says, a new skin on it. You have, instead of the big cattle baron coming to steal your water, you have the space marines coming to steal the unobtainium. Avatar and Dances with Wolves are not that different, really. Although the science fiction, the special effects budget in each movie were used differently. So in the first round, I praised everyone's sincerity and their effort and the fact that, hey, I mean, they had an original song and squibs, and that was cool. And I did pick on the sound. I'd like to pick on here a little bit on the reenacting. The real Civil War reenactors are typically extremely specific and careful. Just watch the movie Gettysburg to see examples of how realistic they look and how well they blend in. These reenactors were kind of much more generic. The cavalry people seemed to not have any rifles, which was kind of funny because, yes, the officers would have pistols because they were too busy to reload, but the soldiers were supposed to have carbines at this point. Their job was to shoot, more than 80 yards away and kill the enemy. Black powder pistols just did not have a very big effective range. So that was kind of amusing. They seemed to have this dire shortage of rifles. And likewise, the Native American reenactors were trying hard, and they did have that original Kiowa dialogue, but their clothing seemed to be kind of generic, and it contained, actually the white people and the Native American groups contained a famous error. And Aaron wishes to clarify, yes, that some movies are not influenced by Western. They are, in fact, the same thing, but with a different skin on it. It is commonly a mistake. Yes, you can make a movie too gritty, but it is commonly a mistake, and we see this really in this movie, that everyone is like charging off into battle in their best clothes. This morning, I had to go on dead rat duty, check the attic for rats caught in traps, and you should see the old paint-spattered junk I wore into the attic. I mean, I had an old army jacket that I got in a garage sale for $2. I did not look good. Likewise, when that kid goes off to steal a horse, he's wearing like this beautiful blue shirt, one of the most expensive shirt he owned. And although art often portrays Native Americans, going off into battle in all of their formal regalia, they were as likely to do that as General Patton was to actually wear his medals into combat. No, that stuff was for after the battle, when you were trying to sneak up on anybody. You didn't wear a lot of attention-attracting clutter on either side of that. So yeah, everyone's clothes are always too clean, too expensive, too nicely made. Every movie's been getting that wrong since the 30s, at least, probably the probably since the invention of motion pictures. But so the reenacting was sloppy, but I did want to praise people's good effort and sincerity for trying hard to, yes, it was full of cliches. That story about the dogs who cheated at gambling. Aaron predicted the end of that as soon as I started it. It was funny. They tried hard, full of cliches, needed more editing, but still, I applaud their effort. NT5TM.
Okay, Tony. Well, you were very diplomatic, and you and Aaron worked hard to give a good spin on this movie and provided some nice background information I was not aware of. So, excellent. Very good. You get an A for effort. So, let's see. Does anybody have any additional comments they want to make about tonight's movie or about science fiction and Western, since we kind of threw that into as filler material? Anybody got anything they want to bring or any additional check-ins? Come now.
N5BB.
Bill, you got it. N5BB from KE5I6.
Yes, Tom, this is N5BB. I want to kind of argue with you or make an alternative statement about your comment that science fiction movies came after Western movies and were kind of based on them or somehow antecedent to them. If you go and look at the first movies, the movies made before 1900, there were a few movies made between 1894 and about 1902, and those movies were very short, like 16 seconds. Some of them were maybe a minute, and they were just demonstrating something, like how a horse was galloping or how Annie Oakley was shooting her guns. They didn't really have a story in them. The first movie, which we still have and that you can watch on YouTube and that a lot of people saw that was a Western, was pretty much the Great Train Robbery in 1903. You can watch it on YouTube. But I doubt you've really seen many scenes from it. If you go and look at them, they're not very memorable scenes. I don't think you probably would remember them in popular culture. But look at the first real science fiction movie that had a plot in it that was over 10 minutes. This was A Trip to the Moon, the 1902 science fiction film by George Méliès. I can't pronounce his last name. And if you go and look at that, I will guarantee you have seen scenes from that, especially the one with the moon that had the spaceship stuck in its eye. So, that's really been much more of an effect in popular culture. And if you look at it, it's really very imaginative. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. So I'm going to disagree with you that Westerns came before science fictions, or as movies. A Trip to the Moon in 1902 was the year before the Great Train Robbery in 1903. I think a more significant movie as far as affecting film and popular culture. That's my 2 cents in 5BB.
You do make a good point, Bill. And yeah, I'm looking here on Wikipedia on A Trip to the Moon, Le Voyage dans la Lune, from 1902. The French venture short film by Georges Méliès, I think is how it's pronounced. I could be wrong. Yeah, you do make a good point about it. And then The Great Train Robbery was the other film, which was a Western. Let's see. What was I going to say about that? I don't have a lot to say, I guess. Probably nothing at all. Oh, let's see if I got anything else on notes. I really don't. I did not get my nap today, so I'm starting to fade early. I know that this net, I anticipate this net, and generally speaking, I always take an hour nap. I did not, so I'm beginning to fade. Does anybody have any additional comments they want to make before I announce next week's movie?
Inside BB.
Okay, there's no one else but Bill. Bill, go ahead.
Very good, Tom. I have a comment about something which I've described before, occurring on Saturday night, but the TV run stopped, and it's just started back up again. This is not science fiction, but it is very good European TV making. It's a series called Professor T, as in Tango. Professor T. And it's on Channel 13, KERA, and it's going to start in about half an hour. Red Dwarf is playing right now, and whenever Red Dwarf ends, around midnight, Professor T is supposed to start back up again. It was on hiatus for a while, but they started again. It's a really interesting, deep, adult crime kind of TV series. But Professor T is a really complex, interesting character, and the acting on the whole thing is superb. I'll just give you a little hint. Professor T is a professor of criminology, but you learn later in the series he actually kind of has a criminal background, and he does a criminal act later on in the thing, and he's imprisoned for it. But it's just, he's a consultant. Anyway, it's a really neat detective kind of thing, trying to figure out who done it on typically murders every week. Filmed over in Europe. Anyway, Professor T, Channel 13, about midnight, Saturday night. N5BB, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bill, and thanks for the reminder for Professor T. I remember you mentioned this about 6 or 8 months ago, but I guess, as you said, it went on hiatus, and thanks for the heads up on it coming back. You made me remember a television show. I was out of town this week, and so I was watching television in a way that I never watched television, and that's in a hotel room, and I was chugging through the channels looking for something to watch to keep me awake so I could sleep later, and I came across a show called Wellington Paranormal. Wellington Paranormal. And the reason I stopped is the gal who plays one of the officers in this show is also in a New Zealand program that's currently airing, or did air in January, called The Eggplant. Yes, it has things to do about that, yes. And she was quite hilarious in that. It's a comedy. And this Wellington Paranormal is a comedy. And as you can imagine, it's a half-hour program. And Wellington is a town, I guess, in New Zealand somewhere. And these two people work on a special, two cops that work on a special thing, much like the X-Files, the paranormal. They're sent out. They've got a boss who is their superior officer, and he sends them on the missions. And it's a pretty hilarious program. Interestingly, most of these are available on YouTube in some way, or they're on CW, which is what's showing the series now. I think they're showing the second season out of 4 seasons currently. It's called Wellington Paranormal. It's a comedy. These two people, they were investigating why a cow was in a tree, and their boss explains to them, well, there's a flying saucer. He takes and flips over a paper plate, and he makes all the sounds that we know flying saucers make, the little, Jetson sound, and he has a little thing, and like a sugar or something. He says, "This is the cow, and the cow is being lifted up," and he moves the paper plate around, and he says, "Oh, the cow is too heavy." The cow ends up in the tree, and so they go and investigate, and before they know it, they have found crop circles. And they find these little devices. They're little tiny, little cigar-shaped pods that look suspiciously like the alien pod. And you know what they're going to do. They're going to, why don't you poke it? And of course they poke it, and then this chemical comes out, knocks them out. He says, "Oh, that hurts." And the other person looks at it and says, the other copy picks it up, and he says, "Did you poke it?" And then he pokes it, and it shoots in his eye. He says, "Ow, that hurts." It's rather, you'd have to see it, but watch it. That episode was called Cock Circles. So if you're into kind of a silly thing that's got an X-Files vibe to it, this is definitely the show. I like it very much. It's available, you can watch it on the CW channel. I think it's at 9:30 to 10 o'clock, something like that on Sunday night if you just want to watch it on regular TV. All right, so I'm going to talk about next week's movie. I think I'm going to move this one up because I found it online. And the reason I want to do this one a little earlier is because it's a program I've not seen since it was on the air in 1971. And there was a television series called The Name of the Game. It had, what's his name, Barry in it. Gene Barry was in it. And he was a newspaper guy, and it involved people that were in the newspaper business. And I think it alternated with some other programs. And so they would do like a TV movie, an hour and a half long. And the episode was called LA 2017. The episode came out in 1971. So you can imagine we go to the future of 2017. And it's directed by a very young, doggone it, what's his name? Steven Spielberg. A very young, he was 24 years old when he directed this, a kid, in essence. And I remember it as being quite entertaining. So that'll be next week's movie. The Name of the Game, TV episode. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long, called LA 2017. We get to see the future from 1971. Okay, that's it from me. If anybody's got any final comments, now is the time. Or if you've got any suggestions for movies to watch in the future, tell me now. Okie dokie. I'm going to bring back 2001: A Space Odyssey as well sometime here in the near future. Good movie is worth repeating. After all this new information I learned, I think you'll have a lot of fun when we do that. Okay, I'll say 7-3 to everybody. We'll see you again next week when we watch the movie the LA 2017 by Steven Spielberg. See y'all later. Have a good evening. This is KE5ICX. Clear.
Thank you, Tom. NT5TM.